Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for June 9th, 2014. Before we get started, a couple of reminders. If you have an electronic device, could you please turn it off or turn it down, please? And second of all, if you plan on addressing the board, please sign in at the podium with your name and address. First matter before us is under continuances. I'm going to take both these petitions, read them separately for the record. The first one is ZB 2014-21. The applicant is McDonald's. The property is located at 803 Rogers Street. Petitions a special permit for reduced parking, illuminated sign, and drive-through lanes pursuant to section 6.1.44, 6.2.33, 6.239, and 12.4. Also a variance to increase the size and height of a sign and for reduced width for angled parking lots pursuant to section 6.1.1, 6.2.2b, and 6.328c. The next petition is ZB 2014-22. This is a special permit and a variance for Hannaford Brothers, LLC. Property located at 847 Rogers Street. Petitions a special permit for illuminated signage pursuant to section 6.2.3.9. And variances to increase the area for a trademark and erect an off-site billboard directional sign pursuant to section 6.3.3.5 and 6.3.4. For the record, we have communication from Novus Engineering from June 2nd, 2014, to the attention both to the ZBA and the Planning Board. And this is in regards to the applications for approvals, McDonald's Restaurant, Hannaford Store, 803 and 8047 Rogers Street. Dear Ms. Bailey, on behalf of McDonald's USA LLC, McDonald's, and Hannaford Brothers LLC, Hannaford, we respectfully request that the public hearings for these applications be continued as follows. Zoning Board of Appeals from June 9th to June 23rd, 2014. This is signed by Richard Belmar from Novus Engineering. So with that said, Joe, any issues with continuing the June 23rd?
No, Mr. Chairman, no issues.
Okay, so I guess besides this communication, there's been a couple of different things going between the petitioner and the city. Is it expected they're going to be ready to go on the 23rd?
At this point, it seems like there's more issues internally with the applicant versus any issues from the city viewpoint. So that's been the reason for the number of continuances requested.
Okay. Okay, could I have a motion to continue the June 23rd, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue to June 23rd, ZB 2014-021, applicant for McDonald's for petition for a special permit and variance, and ZB 2014-022, applicant Hannaford Brothers Company LLC for a special permit and variance.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey.
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. Palliot.
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. Peck.
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. McCarthy.
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. Perrin.
Continue to June 23rd.
Okay, our next order of business is under new business. This is ZB 2014-24, petitions of variance. The applicant is Carlos Concepcion. The property located at 9 Harrison Street. Petition of variance. The petitioner seeks a variance to put an addition on an existing structure after a catastrophe that exceeds the previous three-dimensional footprint of the structure prior to the incident, pursuant to section 4.5.7 of the zoning ordinance. Is Mr. Concepcion here? Yes? You'd like to come up to the podium, sir? Hi, how are you?
Good
So, can you tell us why you're here this evening?
Carlos' fiance, and the property was involved in a fire, and we're taking the opportunity to make the property more safe. So the fire occurred in the back, so we want to rip the balcony off, which we did. We demolished it, and we want to expand the property because the rooms are very small. So we want to take the opportunity to expand the property, and on the second level of the, it's a duplex, and on the second level, we want to create a bathroom because it's a big family apartment for both tenants, and there's only one bathroom. And we also want to include 2 exits, because right now there's only a first floor exit. So in case of an emergency, we want to make sure that the tenants are safe and they can exit the property safely.
Okay. So, Joe, in reading through, this petitioner's purpose for being here, and I know in looking at the plans, and it's just been explained to us. So there was a fire at the property. I know we've seen pictures. We're being asked to look at a couple of variants here. Now, I just need a little bit of direction as far as rebuilding that was currently there versus, there's a fire and now it sounds to me like they want to, I'm not going to use the word, I don't know if you said expansion or not, but they want to increase the footage in there.
That's correct.
So is that your understanding? Is that the city's understanding of what's going on?
Yes, that's correct. Anytime there is some sort of catastrophe, whether it be a fire or flood damage or something along those lines, a person has the opportunity within a year to build to the same footprint without needing any relief. But in order to expand on something that was already there, that would otherwise have a setback issue, it still requires relief from this board. As a part of that, during the review process, we did notice that the addition will bring the property over the FAR requirement. So there would be 2 different variances that would be needed for the petition as it is right now.
Okay. So I know when looking at the plans, approximately so the structure is actually, I guess I'll call it the length of it is going to extend, correct?
That's correct, right, towards the rear of the property.
Right, and how much extension is there? I mean, if you have an answer to that, you can let us know, but,
Looks to be approximately 14 and a half feet.
okay. So the extension of that 14 feet causes one of the issues for the variance, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. And the second variance is the,
Floor area ratio, or FAR requirement.
okay. All right. Now, the rear of the building, is it going to look exactly like it was before? You're going to have a deck still on the back? Or
Well, the fire was caused by a grill that was in the balcony, so we want to tear down the entire balcony. We do not want a balcony back there. We want to prevent people from putting any grills there.
Okay. All right.
And it's unstructurally unsafe, an engineer had told us,
Yep.
so we would have to demolish the whole half the house.
Right. No, I was just wondering if you were putting, once you do the rebuilding, are you putting on decks again?
No,
It looks like
absolutely
the answer is no. Okay. All right. Anything else you'd like to add at this point?
No,
Nope.
that'll be it.
Okay. Are you the owner, or is? I am. Okay. And are you representing Mr. Concepcion? Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up to the public. Anyone here that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone here that'd like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'm going to open it up to the board. Mike, any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions, just a comment, having gone by the property over the weekend. And I mean, it's a very congested neighborhood. A lot of the 2 families, or the homes that are there now, are very close together. But I don't think the addition or any of the changes to the rear of the house can really be seen from the street. So I don't really have any issue with the extension, as Joe mentioned, the 14 feet into to the backyard, so that's it.
Thank you. Van?
I have no comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, you're increasing the size of the structure significantly, and I don't have documentation that states how much you're changing the floor-to-area ratio. Do you have that with you?
We have the dimensions there.
I have a floor plan. I don't know if you have that currently, if that would help.
Okay, so actually, that's not the question. There's a document, so we have a zoning bylaws that have regulations as far as what's by right by zoning and what requires a variance. And one of the elements is the maximum floor-to-area ratio, which is the floor plate of the house to the lot area. So there's a ratio that you need to fall within, or if you're exceeding it, you should document how much you're exceeding it by.
I don't have that information, but I can call my architect
Okay.
if you allow us.
Well, it's a little hard to grant a variance on something that we don't know what we're granting a variance for from a numerical side, but unless, Joe, do you have that information?
I was just looking at it briefly as you were mentioning that, Mr. McCarthy. It would appear to be somewhere in the range of about 750 square feet or so is being added on 800 feet. Based on what they have now, they could add approximately 150 square feet to still be within the floor area ratio, 150 to 160. So it'd be exceeding by somewhere a little over 500 square feet at least.
And it's a small lot, so that's a significant impact on the lot when you go that much beyond zoning. Okay. All right. So we're missing that actual number and documentation here in what you presented. But in addition, you're in a congested neighborhood. You don't seem to provide any off-street parking, or did I miss that?
No,
No, there's no parking, it's on the street.
So
there's
the-
2 parking spaces in the front, just restricted for the house.
Okay, so there's on-street parking only, there's no off-street parking provided. And you're increasing the bedrooms sizes, and you're increasing the quantity of bedrooms. So you're going from 2 3-bedroom units with no off-street parking to 2 4-bedroom units with no off-street parking. You're exceeding the FAR, and you're asking for variance because of setbacks.
Yes, we're removing the deck, and that's where we're gonna replace the deck that we have now with the addition to the bedroom. That's where the new bedrooms are gonna be.
I think this is beyond what I feel comfortable with in this neighborhood. I don't see the hardship here. It's an investment property, is that right?
The bedrooms are so small and the house is so congested that we just feel there's a need to make them a little bit more bigger, to be more spacious for the family that comes in.
I'm sure it would be if it was on a lot that didn't have these issues with no parking and, but I think in that neighborhood, that size house on that site without parking, going to 4 bedrooms in each unit, so there's going to be 2 units each, 4-bedroom, 8 bedrooms, potentially 8 cars, and only 2 parking spaces on the street available. So you're increasing the number of potential cars in the neighborhood.
Well, there's 2 restricted parkings just for the house right in front, but there is a whole street where parking's available for our tenants.
And we do have the length, I have a pretty decent sized, backyard for that extension that we're asking for. We're not asking
By
for.
zoning, though, you'd be asking for a variance for the floor-to-area ratio, so you don't meet the current requirements for open area or lot area for the structure. So I like the idea of repairing this, and I like the idea of making something better, but I'm not sure we have a hardship where it's a rental property, and I'm not sure we are not degrading the neighborhood by putting a larger structure on that site then.
What if we kept it to the maximum? Instead of going over that 500 feet, would you allow that?
I feel much better about that,
Okay.
yes.
We just want to make sure that we have that exit on the second floor
I think that's
and make it a
wonderful.
little bit bigger.
I love the idea of the second
Okay.
stair, no question
We'll,
about it.
we'll keep it at a limit, that's fine.
I feel much better about that.
Okay.
No further questions.
Thank you, Dennis. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I too was looking for the increased square footage for the ratio as well. Certainly with the catastrophe and the fire and rebuilding is a good thing for the city and revitalizing and keeping the property on the tax roll. And I see your future thought of looking out for families and increase, but you're kind of looking at a couple different things here. And you mentioned you might want to talk to your architect about it. And maybe reducing a bedroom, looking at the parking, looking at what that square footage is. Because it does seem a little, I don't want to use the word excessive, but for the space in the lot and the area in which you are in, kind of, you've got a little shoebox there. I give you all the credit in the world for rebuilding and staying here in the city. That's always a positive, but I think there's just a few criteria that you're just missing at this point. And I think you're understanding that a little bit. And just if you could just identify your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
We've indicated on here if that's
Yeah, we'll
sufficient.
just,
Okay.
as long as you signed in. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that's, the reason why I asked the question right at the very beginning, it looked like the plan was to build out. And based on the size of the lot there and that existing neighborhood, you only have 2 parking spots in front. In fact, if Dennis was going to address it, I was going to address it next time around. Joe, I noticed, when it was filled out for the parking, it said NA. I mean, did the department take a look at this? We didn't receive any comments, and we didn't receive any relief or additional parking, so
Right.
you just
The
chime in.
The additional bedrooms didn't trigger any increase in the number of parking spaces that were required. It would be if an additional unit were being added, the parking requirement would have been changed or increased. But because it's only adding bedrooms as opposed to additional unit, it didn't trigger an increase in the parking requirements and therefore didn't need any relief for that.
Okay. All right. Well, based on, I know Dennis mentioned to you about adjusting the plans, and you seem to be acceptable to those. So I'm fine with, if we want to condition a couple of things, one being the change in the plans, which as part, and I won't speak for Dennis, I think he knows what we're going to say, but we're still voting on 2 variances. Is that still correct, Joe? Even if we're going to modify the plans?
I suppose it could be a grant of the original variance for the setbacks, and if it's a condition to meet the FAR requirement, I guess either the applicant could withdraw a request for an FAR variance, or the board could vote on an FAR variance. And if the desire is to keep it under the FAR requirement, then it would seem like the board would want to deny that variance request.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't believe they came forward and asked for a variance for the FAR.
Right, so the withdrawal request probably wouldn't be as clean since there wasn't a formal request for one. So,
And if they go and stay within the FAR, then do they need a variance at all?
they wouldn't, so long as it's a condition of approval. Right.
Kind of
I see what you're getting at, Mr.
situation,
McCarthy. So,
right. I don't think
so
they'd
long
need-
as it's a condition of approval, you wouldn't need a second vote on an FAR requirement. That's
Would you need a vote for the first variance, though, if they
correct. On the
meet the FAR?
setbacks, yes.
on the setbacks, okay.
That was clear as mud. That's good. So Joe, if we decide to continue it, to give the applicant an opportunity to modify their plans so that they'll meet, so that basically we'll just be talking about the one variance, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And
that's another option.
their modification of the plans will then take care of the fire issue, correct?
That's correct.
So
Yep.
if they come back and, so what we're gonna request is to have you come back, but we're gonna have you modify your plans so that you'll fall under the second variance that we were looking for. And since you seem to be acceptable to changing the original build-out, so Joe, could she, excuse me, could the petitioner work with you just to make sure that the plans are
Yeah, absolutely.
presentable the next time? So if you need some assistance, if you want to work with DPD, they can certainly assist you with it. Can we have them come in? Would there be enough time to come in for the next meeting?
I believe so.
So what we'll do is we'll continue it to the next meeting, and hopefully we'll get everything squared away, so at the next meeting, we'll be hopefully all set to go. If you're acceptable to that,
Yes, we are.
do that.
We greatly
Okay.
appreciate it.
Great. All right, so could I have a continuance motion, please?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-024 for variance for Carlos Concepcion for 9 Harrison Street to continue to June 23rd.
Do I have a second?
Second motion.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey,
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. Palia,
Continue to June 23rd?
Mr. Peck,
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. McCarthy,
Continue to June 23rd.
Mr. Perrin.
Continue to June 23rd.
Okay, Ms. Concepcion, we'll see you in a couple of weeks on June 23rd. All right,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, our next matter before us is ZB 2014-25. The petitions of variance. The applicant is Mario Vega. The property is located at 538 Andover Street. And the petitions of variance. The petitioner seeks a variance to construct a breezeway between the existing garage and house that will create a nonconformity regarding the rear yard setback requirement. Pursuant to Section 5.1 of the zoning ordinance. You, Mr. Vega?
Actually, the son-in-law, Kevin Fernandez, representing him.
Okay, very good. So can you tell us about the petition, please?
We're gonna connect the house to the garage, close it in the front with a door, put some screens in the back, and brick it so it matches the house, and a little bit of vinyl around the windows, so.
Is there going to be any furniture or anything in that breezeway, or is this just basically?
No, you'll probably have a table or some chairs to sit there, but
Yeah,
nothing to use every day.
yeah. So the main purpose of constructing it is to do what?
Avoid the snow that we have to clean and the rain, and
Sure,
so we could just go from the garage to the house and not have to be outside.
okay. All right, is that all
That's
you'd
it.
like to tell us?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there any, I'm going to open it up to the public. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor, in favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Opposition, opposition? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open it up to the board. Mike?
Just two comments, Mr. Chairman. We did, or maybe Joe was going to mention that we did receive a copy of an email from the Historic Board, and they mentioned that although they don't have any jurisdiction over this particular issue, they also don't see any problems with the addition of the breezeway. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention, I took a ride by there. In fact, I think you were pulling into the driveway when I was leaving Saturday or Sunday morning. But as was mentioned in the plans and the Historic Board or DPD's comments, this is really only seen from Glen Road, so it doesn't really affect the front of the house or anyone's view going down Andover Street. So I don't have any issues with it or any questions.
Okay, thank you. Van?
I don't really have any comments, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a good project, and, you know, it doesn't reflect badly on the property or anything, and it actually probably enhances the neighborhood, if anything. So overall, I think this is a good project. So I
Great.
wish you best of luck.
Thank you. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just have some questions on the request for a variance. The 1.7 feet that you're referring to, that you don't meet the setback, what setback exactly are you referring to in that?
It's a side setback. We need 10 feet from the lot line, where the front of the garage is 8 feet 3 inches from the lot line, so we need a variance that was short a foot 7 inches on the front. The back we do have, because the lot opens to the right in the back.
So the new construction conforms to the setback criteria. It's because you're linking the new construction and the garage that now the garage is non-conforming.
Because we're connecting the house to the garage, now it becomes one whole unit.
Right.
So we're short a foot 7 inches.
Right. I understand that. So I'm glad, thank you for clarifying that. The addition itself is listed as a proposed breezeway. The drawings are relatively simple. They seem to show a single-level breezeway,
Correct.
and the garage is also just a single level? There's
Correct.
nothing above it?
Nope.
Because you're so close to the property line, I'd be a little worried if the variance were to go through that you could possibly add on over the garage and build a big 2.5-story garage there.
The house is big enough. We don't.
It is, it should, I
We
agree.
don't need any, it's 6,000 square feet. We don't need any more space.
I guess I would just like to entertain a condition that no additional structures be placed above the garage where you're so
Sure.
close to the property line.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Karen?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have no comments. Mr. McCarthy's condition satisfies my concern as well. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I took a ride out there, and I would say, based on, and seeing there's nobody from the neighborhood that's here speaking either for or against it, I believe the request is reasonable. I don't see it creating any issues for the neighborhood or everybody else be running out now and connecting their garages. I think the plans that were submitted were very well done. I got a good idea of what's going there. I believe if we look at the prerequisites, this petition would meet the prerequisites that are in place for the petition, and if the petitioner is acceptable to the condition that Dennis has suggested, I'm also in favor of this, so could I have a motion, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-025 for a variance for Mario Viega at 538 Andover Street, for a variance for side yard setback reduction, with the following condition, that the existing garage received no additional built structures above it.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Palio,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approved with condition.
Mr. Peck,
Approve conditions.
Mr. Perrin.
Approve with conditions.
Okay, sir, you've been approved with conditions. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, our next order of business is under other business, and we have a special guest here this evening. I'd like to discuss the Air City Industrial Park Urban Revitalization and Development Project. Very long. Board will review the final draft of the Air City Industrial Park Urban Revitalization and Development Project. And I guess this will include the Tanner Street area, and I'll turn it over to our special guest this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Craig Thomas. I'm the Urban Renewal Project Manager for the City of Lowell. You all probably remember that because I've been in here relatively frequently as of late, but it's nice to be back. The long title is the technical name the state makes us put on our urban renewal plans. The way we've tried to set up a branding scheme for Tanner Street is based on its historic roots from Daniel Ayers setting up the Tanner Street District, so we're calling it Air City Industrial Park, just as a side note. And this is coming out of the approval process that's been ongoing. This is a project that evolved through public meetings and writing internally with the departmental staff, as well as coordination with the state in 2012 and 2013. And then for 2014, we've been in an approval process. We were before the planning board. We had community meetings. But there are other folks who will be critical in implementing this plan as it's built out over 20 years, but with whom we had no specific statutory requirement. So we wanted to go out, and the Department of Planning and Development, the city as a whole, wanted to go out and talk about our plans. So again, those who will be intimately involved with it being developed over time will understand what we're proposing, why we're proposing it, and hopefully we can talk about the vision and how we get there. So we have an informational proposal. This was approved by the City Council some weeks ago, and as is in the packet for the Council this week, we just received approval from the state. So this is actually now an enforced urban renewal plan. Let's see if this works. Success. Okay. So the presentation outline, I'm going to talk about urban renewal in Lowell in general, because there's some reasons why we do these plans, where we go through this effort, and it allows us to bring certain resources to the table to be partners for redevelopment. Then I'm going to talk about the Air City Industrial Park plan itself, the vision, the conditions, our planning efforts, what we see for principally city actions, which are infrastructure and green space, among others, and then what we see as larger redevelopment outcomes. And please, again, I know the audience may be gripped by my words, but interrupt me at any time to let me know your thoughts about this. So the benefits of urban renewal. This is a slide that just helps to remind everyone, again, why we do this. The principal reasons we do this we have found over time to be three, how we use our modern urban renewal plans. Again, Lowell actually has a long history of urban renewal, a good chunk of it in the bad old days of large-scale clearance without any understanding of the neighborhood, the existing residents and businesses, and wanting to be a partner in redevelopment rather than the city driving the bus for something that maybe wasn't so well thought out. Although, again, all of the plans over time have had ups and downs, and we've realized considerable benefit. For our modern urban renewal plans, which we'll get to, it's a little bit different, and these are what we see as the benefits. In furtherance of the specific actions that are defined in the plan, again, the plan is up online, and if you don't have a paper copy, I'll make sure you have access to it at any point. But the state requires us to be very specific in what we want to do, down to the parcel level, the amount of parking on each parcel, where new roadways will go, the kinds of businesses we want to see. And once that plan is approved, again, through our public process, as well as with different boards, planning board and with the council, the city can actually work like a private redeveloper in furtherance of that plan. So only where we're trying to achieve the outcomes that we've set forward and that we've talked about publicly and that we've all bought into, we can then sell land to someone if, say, they're the adjacent landowner and a chunk of city-owned land will help them create a development site that will be supportive of the kind of industrial development that we want. Typically, we'd have to go out to RFP. The next door owner would be a very competitive bid, but they might not be the winner, and that's not what we want in these areas. To be designated as an area, there are elements of historic legacy of non-conforming parcels, awkward access and roadway issues, such that that type of city engagement is really necessary to achieve a positive development outcome. We also find that it helps with our grant opportunities, both securing grants from the state and federal government. They give us extra points on grant applications when we've been very successful in securing grant money both in the two active urban renewal areas, the Acre and the Jam Plan Hamilton Canal District, as well as spending money. Our local entitlement grants, it's easier to spend them in our urban renewal areas and in furtherance of urban renewal goals than citywide, although again, they tend to be relatively flexible funds that the city uses in a wide variety of ways. And finally, one that's a little less obvious, but has been very helpful for us is that to complete these plans, they require robust public participation, again, because these are some of the most deep engagement that a city can undertake in an area. Specific work with property owners, talking about the redevelopment of their sites, building new roadways, actively engaging and turning over new uses. And as a part of that, the city is aggressively, in all of our modern plans, the 3 existing plans now, aggressively sought input and created opportunities for input on our website. We had the plan up for a long time. We had a long comment period with the council. We went out to the neighborhood on many occasions, out to the LRTA building on Hale Street, as well as sent multiple mailers to all the property owners and businesses to try and get as much information as possible. And now that we have a lot of buy-in and we've gone through this process, as new initiatives start to take form, and a good example is with the 43D Growth District initiative at the state, that came up and they were looking for mixed use and dense housing next to transit and commercial opportunities, but you need to have a robust process to make sure people want this kind of development. We said, we just did the Hamilton Canal District planning. We have this ready to go, and we were incredibly lucky to be beneficiaries of both their technical assistance as well as grant making. And we found that that argument really is impressive to a lot of people, especially at the state level, who have different initiatives emerging where we can say, we really have thought this out. We've worked with folks very intensively, and there are a lot of people on board for this. We don't need to wait and go into a public process, although we'll always keep people abreast of what we're doing, but rather we have thought this through. We have lots of people who know what we're doing and who like what we're doing, and we're ready to move forward very quickly. And that's been a really strong persuasive argument on our behalf. So again, as I mentioned, and as this board is very familiar with, there are 2 active urban renewal areas prior to the recent approval of the Air City Industrial Park. The Acre Plan and the Jam Plan, and the Jam Plan contains the Hamilton Canal District. But even as recently as 2000, a point at which the city had undergone considerable rebirth and growth in the downtown housing and some of our arts community, there were still parts of the city that needed some extra engagement from the public sector to try and turn around. These are slides from buildings, relatively iconic buildings in the Acre and Jam Plan area. Let me see if, so this is the Appleton Mills on the top right. Below that is actually Suffolk Street, where there are all the new 2-family houses that were built in partnership with Coalition for a Better Acre. There's the building up on Fletcher Street, as well as another Fletcher Street photo and the Marston building. Today, again, I'm sure you're very aware, but we've had considerable success in both of the existing urban renewal areas, both with completed projects and setting the stage to change the market dynamics such that they are areas that experience private redevelopment. We set the stage through public action that these areas take on a force of their own and that the public can step back at the conclusion of the planned life. So in the Jam Plan, we built the early garage to support the redevelopment of all the mills around there, which includes the Appleton Mills, Loft 27, Counting House Lofts, the Cotton House Lofts, the Lowell Community Health Center. These are major projects with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of square feet of formerly vacant mill space. In the Acre Plan, we pulled off significant projects with the Stocklosa School, which was the reuse of a gasification site, the Senior Center, Rite Aid Plaza, which was formerly the city stable and barn, and then Market Basket, which was formerly the city trash truck yard, which I've been told was not a nice place at one time. We've also targeted, more so in the Acre than the Jam, small-scale, pedestrian-level housing infill, trying to rebuild a traditionally residential neighborhood on Marion and Cork Street, what's now called Cork Street, Suffolk Street, and Fletcher Street. So transitioning to the new plan, the Air City Industrial Park, it does have its genesis all the way back in 2010, which was the solicitation and awarding of an EPA Brownfields area-wide planning grant. It's a different kind of grant. The EPA usually does very site-specific things, but they started to understand, as everyone does, that it's really about partnership and mixing resources, and that a brownfield redevelopment is not about that one site, but rather the district that it's in and even the municipality that's a part of, to understand what can be redeveloped there. Because the brownfield program, even though it's about contamination and remediation, is really about jobs and economic development. That's really the language of EPA. And so they gave us this to look at the Tanner Street area. We had a public planning process, and then we worked to complete the draft document. And again, 2014, we've been going through the approval process. So this is the vision statement. This language comes a little bit out of the master planning process, which was happening concurrently in 2012, 2013. But it really focuses on Air City Industrial Park history as the Tanner Street Industrial Corridor and what we want it to be. So it says, Air City Industrial Park should be an active, economically vital, attractive, and sustainable commercial industrial district that supports existing businesses, attracts new business and development, provides attractive multimodal links and connection. And this is principally to the Gallagher Terminal, which is the city's main bus hub. So that if we're talking about a place where we're trying to create an employment base, that all the residents of the city, even the surrounding areas that are serviced by the bus station, can take advantage of that, as well as improve access from the Sacred Heart neighborhood that's directly adjacent. And finally, it's not really a focus of the plan, but because we have a river as well as a pond in the area, to enhance the appreciation and connection to natural resources. We did hear this from the residents in what is actually the Air City residential neighborhood, but we call now part of Sacred Heart, that there isn't a lot of park space in and around them. So we thought we could build out some very simple amenities as a part of this plan, but that's not really the focus of what we're doing. So here's the project boundary. The boundary is pretty easy to understand relative to, for most of its area based on the boundaries. It's just north of the Lowell connector. Here's the Plain Street Exchange here on the bottom left of the plan. It includes Manufacturer Street, which is just beyond the plan, and then follows the Lowell connector up to the railroad tracks. This is the active freight and commuter rail tracks. It follows that down to the infamous Spaghettiville Bridge. Then along Maple Street includes a section of an old rail spur that dips down here, that dips down to the south here. And then along Canada Street, and then it gets a little jagged here. And the reason for that is twofold, but they're linked together, which is this area here has a pretty strong grade change, and the grade change actually delineates residential from commercial and industrial property. So we actually, in this plan, have no active residential uses. So this boundary we drew around the residences, and that naturally, as land use patterns sometimes develop in a beneficial way over time, the residences had tried to segregate themselves a little bit up the hill, and so we drew it midway on the hill such that down the hill was the industrial uses. There is one residential building in the district, but that's been vacant as we've checked it, which is over here in the area of Main Street. Okay. So to understand what the redevelopment potential in the district was when we started planning it, we had to really think about what existed on the ground, what we were looking at for today. And what you see for land uses were almost a third of it being the right-of-way, and that's overwhelmingly the Lowell connector. That is otherwise not important, except that the greenway we're proposing at one point, again, which we want to be a very simple connection, nothing as complicated or as impressive as the Concord River Greenway, something of that style. There's plenty of right-of-way entirely owned by one owner, the state, where we could do such a project. That makes it both easier and more complicated. You see an incredible amount of vacant land. And again, this is where we see one of the biggest opportunities. The red here is vacant. And this is in an area that's essentially landlocked now, that is one of the keys that we're hoping to open up for redevelopment here. Also, when I talked about water features, you can see here this blue. This is a pond that's behind the condos on Maple Street. Very few people know it's back there. There is an industrial base. As we said, we want to support existing industrial businesses to the greatest extent possible, and those are the green colors you see on this map. And then there are a series of auto-related uses, and those have a couple different colors because they come in a couple different categories. Of note, when we talk about the density of development, and Dennis, I know you just brought this up with one of the previous applicants, the existing FAR out in the district now is 0.2, so there's 600,000 square feet of space. Again, some largely industrial would be the biggest use category. But even under existing zoning, which as with our other two urban renewal plans, this is going to drive us to a new zoning regime, which we're working to develop now, and that will be about which input from this board will be really critical as we try and roll that out going, hopefully in the fall. But there's the potential, even on the existing zoning, for 6 million square feet of development out there. So it's literally a tenth of what could be there even today. Again, this is all part of the same argument we made to the state, which they approved, and that for ourselves we need to understand, which is this area does have successful businesses, but there's really a deficit where the market conditions for redevelopment exist. That is, again, the action of the city, we want to overcome that deficit, provide the conditions that create a self-sustaining market out there. So when we were trying to understand what we could propose for redevelopment, after we looked at what existed on the ground, we looked at what those uses were and if they were likely to change. What you'll notice, incidentally, is this is an older map because the planning process, we started with a different boundary than everything north of the railroad here. We did review and we determined that it was actually a relatively stable place that had decent market turnover, so we cut that out of the plan. All the red here are things where we see a very good chance of near-term change. As well, you see the blue are opportunities for midterm change. So just between those two, you see a lot of opportunity here. Excuse me, what's our midterm change here? Oh, the red is near and midterm. So the red are where we see a lot of opportunities for redevelopment, as well as the blue being long-term change, but where that's connected to areas where we see a better opportunity for redevelopment, we try to be thoughtful about how we could combine those things. Excuse me for my confusion of language there. As a part of that, we looked at what the existing conditions were, what we had on the site, what we have on the site now. We looked at the uses and what their potential for redevelopment was. And then we worked with a market consultant to understand what kinds of businesses we could hope to attract to this area. Again, an area where the principal focus is on creating jobs and increasing the city's tax base. So our advantages are we have low relative costs in the Boston metro area. We're right off the Plain Street exit. The commuter rail is within walking distance, although again, we hope to make enhancements to improve access. The educational infrastructure, both with a very large and successful community college, and at this point, nationally and world-renowned UMass campus. And that we did hear that the city government's willing to partner and take on projects, complicated projects just like this, is really an asset to folks who are coming in to know if they'll have a partner for their projects. On the demand side, we saw small, flexible industrial buildings are really the demand we see now, and this is actually backed up by a lot of the requests we get through our economic development department about folks who are looking for space. What that means are small 10,000 square foot chunks that have independent loading docks. There's a proposal now on Western Avenue. I don't know if this came before this board, Joe, or just the planning board.
Just the planning board.
That is actually a very good example of the kind of space we see demand for, and Western Avenue is a place where, as it turns out, there is a market functioning such that it's profitable for someone to build that. So they're seeing the same things we are, which is very good news. We also heard that there's an opportunity for retail along Plain Street and Manufacturer Street, but that there's no real demand in the market, and really from the city side, for office spaces in the area, in the district, or for large speculative spaces. And what that means is, large flat areas that we assemble and prepare, we call pad-ready sites, and then wait for someone to come in, or to simply build out a building and then wait for tenants. So this plan is set up to work in partnership with private redevelopers who have a project, who have businesses who want to work with us, that we can work in any way where the city can be a helpful partner and move ahead with their project, if appropriate. So here's the redevelopment proposal. Yep. Of course. Yep. No, so all of those numbers are true, but don't necessarily go together in the most causal way, which is the 6 million square feet is just to say the density of development that's allowable out there under zoning. It's an indication of, again, what the level of demand we see out there is, and being so far below even what we allow by right, let alone through a variance process, indicates that we don't have a lot of demand for the space out there. The 10,000 square foot units are not necessarily, and probably in fact, are not the way to get to that size, but rather they're the kind of development we see that targets job producers and that fits with what the market demand for redevelopment is at the moment. And this is a 20-year plan, so that will change over time, but that's what we set it up.
And what kind of density would 10,000 square foot pieces really add up to? More like 1 million square feet?
So
or-
I'll show you, actually. This plan is designed, it's actually less than that. It's designed to maximize the 10,000 square foot size and that style of development. So what you see here is all of the brown buildings are proposed new industrial space. And as opposed to, again, well, let's just show here, we have the yellow you see here are new access ways through here and through here to create frontage for these parcels. And then we have, again, brown are proposed new industrial buildings, and red are proposed new retail commercial buildings. Brown. And I'll show a little bit more clearly in the coming slides what this looks like. So our development opportunity areas, we have A and B. We see, again, you can see these are tractor trailers and our loading docks. So we tried to split them up in the size buildings that could be in those 10,000 square foot chunks, as well as have loading dock accessibility. And that produces, on these sites, 45,000 square feet of industrial space on parcel A, as well as 40,000 square feet in redevelopment site A, and 40,000 square feet in redevelopment site B. This is Tanner Street here. This is Cambridge Street. In C, again, this is the large vacant area I discussed that really has a lot of opportunity. So C includes these three buildings here, and there's, as it's drawn here, we have 160,000 square feet of industrial space. And to answer your question, these are largely one-story pole buildings. And in D, we have another 55,000 square feet of industrial space. Here are the access roads that I discussed, here and here. Now, this is an old graphic. Based on the way the plan was approved through the council and our ongoing conversations, there have been two changes to this roadway network. One is that this system comes together in a Y here, so that there's one access off of that one access that comes together here, so that you don't have these two streets like this. As well as, it seems very likely based on conversations that as redevelopment proceeds, there will not be a connection between Maple Street and Canada Street. We looked at that in a couple different ways. We talked with neighbors who were concerned about it, and there are other ways to achieve our goals from that, which really, again, to increase access and have productive sites that are marketable. Down by Plain Street, so this is Plain Street here, and this is a little connector. We have new retail sites on either side of realigned Tanner Street. So this yellow here is a realigned Tanner Street that meets the signal with Target, that moves the Tanner Street as it currently sits, that causes problems for access, and that actually leads to a lot of trucks sneaking down Main Street, which is the heart of the residential neighborhood just to the east of this. We're going to realign it to a signalized intersection to improve access and try and, again, increase the marketability of the site, of all the sites in the district, protect the residential area, and maximize the parcel reconfiguration at the mouth of Tanner Street here. So we have 10,000 plus square foot retail areas, as well as a new industrial area that is currently inaccessible, and then a new flexible area over here at K on Manufacturer Street. This is one where we don't actually have a specific square footage because there's so many different combinations of this that we tried to leave this a little bit more flexible. And we worked with the state, despite the way they make us be very specific in our application, that they were okay with the way we defined this. So total, we're talking about 330,000 square feet plus the redevelopment on K over here on Manufacturer Street. To support that, we have a series of key infrastructure improvements. Again, I talked about the Tanner Street realignment. So this is Tanner Street as it exists today. To the left, the red is our proposed realignment. This was a goal of the planning process from the outset, and we ended up settling on this option for several reasons. Again, the goal for realignment were to enhance the redevelopment potential, accommodate increased traffic from the new development, and remove it from Tanner Street, and create a gateway to the district. And this alignment is preferable for its ease of maneuverability for trucks, as far as the turning movements for the new street, as well as it minimizes its impacts to existing businesses. We work very closely with the business owners at the end of the street. It's our belief that this will maintain all the business owners in their current sites, although some of the way their parcels work may have to be reconfigured. And it will maximize the redevelopment potential of the existing parcels. Again, there's a large chunk over here. It's actually connected with the car wash out on Tanner Street that's inaccessible at the moment. That will be new development space with new frontage here. I thought so. For the Lowell connector, we looked at a lot of different things, and we were trying to get really creative to bring it down to an at-grade crossing, to improve connection to the district. There are a lot of ideas floating around. It's just the cost we were talking about, not actually the bringing it down. Strangely enough, that the cost issue we had, and a safety one, the cost is because of River Meadow Brook, Hales Brook runs right there. So we're talking several bridges associated with any of these plans, as well as because of the Plain Street on-ramps, the weaving motions to get on and off the connector, even if we brought it down to grade and slowed it down, would be pretty dangerous, is what we heard from our transportation engineers. So instead, what we came up with was leaving the connector in its existing footprint and in its existing form, we could try and green it and slow it down to improve safety in an area that abruptly ends, as all of us know, and that consistently has traffic safety problems at its connection with Gorham Street. So that we propose cutting it from 3 lanes to 2 in either direction and shrink the lanes and add trees, both just as a pure aesthetic greenscaping element, but as a way to signal people who are coming north of Plain Street, south of Plain Street will continue to be a highway feel that brings people to this industrial district as well as other areas. But north of Plain Street, coming in towards Thorndike and Gorham, they start to understand that they're in an urban area and that they're in a place where they need to slow down and start to meet the other roads in a safer way. That's the goal for that. And then, again, because we're doing it within the existing right-of-way, we're really talking about new striping, new signs, trees, ripping up some pavement. It's very, very reasonable, if the state agrees. In addition, we have a couple other key proposals for streetscapes. The Tanner Street streetscape, if anyone's driven on Tanner Street, knows that it's not really a streetscape at the moment. It's just a hot top from building to building. We're not proposing making it a beautiful tree line. We're not proposing to make it a downtown urban area. We are proposing to add trees just for some vegetation, some green space out there. But really, again, it's an industrial district. So we're looking at wider parking lanes, maintaining wider lanes, and providing one sidewalk so that there is some safer access for pedestrians. But again, that we support the businesses in the area. Critically, we're looking at new buffers on Canada and Maple Streets. Canada and Maple are streets that have both strong industrial businesses on them as well as strong residences, and this is why we work to avoid in the city having zoning districts drawn down the middle of streets where at all possible. That the uses, while they're strong in and of their own accord, they do create conflict for both sides, and that we're hoping we can try and add buffers so that protects the residential areas a little bit more, and to the best of our ability, try and segregate those uses a little bit across these streets. In addition, we're looking at right-of-way improvements around Manufacturer Street. This is out behind McDonald's on Plain Street, to make the area, again, more accessible, and principally to make it feel like roadways back there. We think one of the impediments to redevelopment there is simply the way that it's laid out feels like a large rear parking lot as opposed to several development sites that are along roadways. So again, for green space, we have a proposed River Meadow Brook Greenway, which is the dark green line next to River Meadow Brook, Hales Brook, in the Lowell connector right-of-way, as well as East Pond Park and Cambridge Street Overlook. So East Pond, again, as I mentioned, there's a pond in this district. It's behind the Maple Street condominiums. This is probably one of the last things that will ever be built in this district because this is dependent upon a successful district and having folks out there, being active and having eyes on. We are not in the business of being building parks that no one can see, or we're putting people where it's not safe. But we wanted to make clear our intention that one day this is an interesting feature that both could be part of a stormwater regime, that we could, with all the new roadways we're proposing to build, we can actually provide water back into this pond for recharge through, with appropriate remediation of suspended solids through our stormwater system. But also, again, it's an amenity for even workers there who will be in this new district, as well as residents who are just to the south there. Cambridge Street Overlook Park, this is really about connection to the new greenway as well. It's really all one system. There's a city-owned parcel down there, and that we were looking at this as a way to make sure that there were some mid-block connections to the greenway, so it wasn't so isolated between Plain Street and, north of Lincoln Street before Howard Street.
How are you connecting pedestrians to these two parks? Do we have links with the bikeways or pedestrian paths or something?
Let me see. When I get to the end, I'm sorry, but when I get to the end, I'll go back to the illustrative plan, the large map, and I'll show you how that works. If I can, I may forget, so just make sure I get reminded here. Actually, this is great timing. This is the overall project plan again. This is not meant to be As nice as the illustrative plan that's the graphic to really show visually what we're doing, this is really a technical review of all of the specific city actions relative to what we're doing. So again, the Greenway here, the hope is to connect it and ultimately connect it to the Concord River Greenway. One of the big missing links in the bike and pedestrian and greenway infrastructure in the entire state happens in Lowell, where a regional rail trail, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, ends at the Connector Park area. And that, this is the Crosspoint building. It ends, and that we're building the Concord River Greenway, which then connects to further bike paths out on the Merrimack River, but that in between through the city, there's not a good way to try and link those two things. We hear a lot of advocates, especially for green spaces and biking infrastructure. This is of interest to them. So we tried to find a way to have this be an important segment of that. Here, the access, I think, is relatively straightforward, coming off of the Target Plaza, and you come through in a protected way along the Lowell Connector right-of-way. And then this is one of the trickiest parts here, because the city, once you get to Gorham Street over here, the city owns another slice of land that along Chambers Street that seems to be relatively well set up for a greenway, but would likely have to go up and over the rail tracks here as a part of the connector and then back down again. It's not ideal, and I don't know if there's another way we'll be able to do it. But that's another reason why we want to have a Cambridge Street access point here. In addition, this park here, the vision is that as the roadway network changes, there will be actually frontage along another road in the back here and other businesses back here. So this plan, again, we developed it partly on purpose at the same time with the master plan. The Tanner Street Initiative, which is at this point now the Air City Industrial Park, has been it's been in the works off and on for years, but it's just something we can never coalesce around. We can never try and get our thinking fully put together. There weren't other initiatives that could help us define the vision for it. And the master plan was a good opportunity to revisit it, to get a broad community input, because again, the master plan, there were a lot of staff members and a lot of community members who really engaged in a long process. We got to really understand the goals and objectives of the community, and we used that to build the vision for Air City Industrial Park. And the outcomes for the plan are cleaned up and redeveloped brownfields, more than 330,000 square feet of new development, hundreds of new employment opportunities, new tax revenue, transformation of the connector, parks and greenway, and enhanced gateways and enhanced streetscapes. One thing I should point out too about the River Meadowbrook Greenway, it falls in the category of a big idea. We always want to, in these plans, have a big idea in there, but it's big enough and complex enough, and we know it is far enough away that I didn't actually put it in the project budget. And the state understood that explanation and actually approved it to say, this is a big idea. We want to have big ideas in our plans, but we don't want to rely solely on them. We want to have very specific, concrete, on-the-ground, parcel-by-parcel ideas, which are much more of this plan, and that we can focus on building it out such that one day they could support those big visions so that those become a reality. So that's it. Of course, absolutely. Yeah, let's, I might have killed this, hold on. Yeah, it's a very good point, and it's actually an important part of the plan. It's a little hard to cover, all the thing in a shorter presentation, but what we found in talking to folks, and it was helpful, sometimes a city like Lowell is fortunate enough to have enough staff that we can do some of these kinds of plans in-house. Much of this was done in-house, but the initial visioning, we worked with a consultant through the EPA grant. It was helpful to have a new set of eyes, because they said, well, you have you have the Gallagher Terminal right here, right off the edge of the plan. But were you to start there from the bus stop and try to walk to this area, you can't really do it. And it's not even the fact that you have to curve around and come up to YMCA Drive. There's no sidewalk there. There's no signage there. There's nothing that indicates you would ever want to do that, or that it's in fact encouraged by the city. So something as simple as working with the LRTA to install signage, to install sidewalks, to install green space and a treeway so people feel that it's a safe, reasonable place to walk, and that it's within a half mile to the core of what we're talking about for redevelopment. Yes, so these plans are typically developed with a specific zoning scheme in place or in mind. This is one where we're actually working, and I secured a grant from NEMCOG for their technical assistance to put together an industrial form-based code or performance standard zoning. Now, it's going to be more difficult than we thought because there are no good models for it, actually. We looked around, even in our so we have our near-term peers, but even with folks that aren't really our peers, even the bigger cities, they don't really do this. And so we're hoping to do it, but in the interim, because we want to move forward with it, what we're likely to do is put together one package that if we can bring in as many of the performance standards and form-based code standards that we want will be in there, but rather we'll work on the things that we know, which are the uses, some of the utility locations, some of the other performance standards that are a little simpler, a little more straightforward, and direct that towards the next step to see if we can get that form-based in there, that the way we want it, that can really be a model for this work. Yep, yeah, and a critical goal of that is to simplify and add certainty to the entitlement process.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions?
I had a couple of
Greg?
comments, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman. One of the things that strikes me, and I've been following the various meetings, whether with City Council or some of the other presentations that you and the department have made, one of the things that really strikes me is that nearly a quarter of the land in the district is vacant. I think there was some misunderstandings throughout the city that we were just going to take a lot of the existing buildings or lots, either by taking businesses or relocating them, when in fact nearly a quarter of the land is available for some of this new construction. So, and I'm sure people have heard this presentation before. That helped to clarify the fact that there's a huge amount of space there that's just vacant, waiting to be cleaned up and redeveloped. One of the things I really like too is, like you said about Manufacturer Street, I mean, I would be willing to bet half the residents of the city don't even realize that that's a street. It just looks like a gigantic parking lot behind the McDonald's. So to have the street aligned in its current position, but have structures on both sides with clearly marked parking, I mean, that space that's there now is just a giant lot. I don't even know if it's lined, and it hasn't been that way for a long time. So that, I think, is a big positive part of the plan. The same thing with the moving of Tanner Street. I think the plan that you've shown us does not eliminate the car wash. It does not eliminate the VFW hall. It just helps to move the traffic away from the exits or entry ramps on and off the connector, which I think, although the Target project helped in a way with the new lights and turn lanes, it's still very hard to get in and out of Tanner Street where it's currently aligned. So I think that's another real positive. The River Meadow Brook, this will be my last comment. I guess I don't have any questions, Craig. I'm just lecturing you from my little table over here. But again, I think, like you said, the River Meadow Brook Greenway will definitely be a big picture part of the project. I've been by there many, many times and tried to just navigate it myself, and it's just so overgrown. I don't think anyone looking at it now thinks it's an area that could actually be turned into a greenway. I believe it can be, but it's definitely, it would probably be much easier to build 6 or 8 10,000 square foot buildings than it would be to clean up the area around that brook without a lot of work. So, but I mean, I think this is a great project for this area, and I look forward to being on this board as parts of the project are brought to us. So,
Thank you, Mr. Paglia. Chairman, if I would, I know there weren't necessarily any questions there, but it made me think of 2 comments. First, and just for those who have an interest in the history of this area, which I've come to very much appreciate, River Meadow Brook obviously was not so straight as it is now. It was once a meandering stream. It was straightened at a different time of environmental understanding to be really a drainage swale between the roadway and the industrial property owners. But it was done with so little concern as to the outcome and to do it in the cheapest way possible, as opposed to some areas of the Merrimack River where they hardened the banks with stone to make it a more permanent structure, which has some benefits, and we appreciate the industrial character of the Merrimack River. They had earthen banks there. So they actually rebuilt a natural stream system in the way that now is sort of a best practice for rebuilding riparian environments. So it really is a relatively stable riverine environment, even though they didn't really mean it to be. So it's very interesting, as well as a lot of the vacant space, and it does, really has to do with, again, the marketability of the district, which has concerns related to contamination and the presence of a Superfund site there. This is real, and this happened over time, but part of the core focus of this plan is to work on changing that perception, for which there's some very significant fact, and there is some reality there, but in some ways, across the district, there's more of a perception problem than anything else. And what you'll notice that's of interest here is this is this light-colored building is the trailer on the Silresum site. The Silresum site is this triangle here. This is the trailer, and what you notice in what I circled is that this building is actually on a rear portion of it. So our understanding that the cleanup efforts have been so successful on the rear portion, both the groundwater treatment that's been ongoing for decades, as well as a pretty innovative electric resistance heating, ERH, I can't remember if it's electric or electronic. They basically put probes into the ground and then superheated the subsurface to boil off some of the contaminants, that it actually should be open for redevelopment in the coming years. And we're working very closely with the state and our federal environmental partners to make that a reality.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Just one comment through you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you for your time in the presentation, the amount of information you gave us in the slide presentation, and just your passion and vigor for this section of the city, which is perceptively industrial, hardscaped, never to be built on again. Us that are getting older in life remember it as what it is perceived to be, not generally looking in the direction of the chairman, but I think as the future moves forward with the newer generations and green space and parks, and that is a nice little pond behind Maple Street that a lot of the South Lowell people are familiar with. So I just want to thank both yourself and your department and your colleagues for the presentation tonight. It's very well mapped out, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, I'd like to echo Gary's comments. Very well done. I know there's been a lot of fanfare about the area. It'd probably be very helpful to all parties to get more information, because, as you know, there seems to be a lot of thoughts about what's actually going down there, what's going to be lost, what's going to be gained. So, but appreciate the overview. It was very well done.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. I always appreciate the opportunity to come out and talk about what we're trying to do, because we feel very confident we've taken a lot of care in the way we plan this, that this really will be a benefit for everyone involved here.
I guess my only 2 cents would be, there's a lot of talk about the connector, and so what's the traffic study potential impact would be for 3A?
It's an interesting question. And again, we're not proposing to change the traffic volumes in any way, because the roadway, especially once you get more towards downtown Lowell and 3A, really could be accommodated on a 2-lane road without changing the level of service at all. The level of service being how quickly you can get where you want to go. And so it's really about, again, trying to create safety upgrades and to have markers for folks who are on that this is an urban environment as much as it is about any aesthetic improvement, to say we need to slow down, but also those actions in themselves won't really change the nature of the traffic. The access to this will be from Plain Street going south. So imagine people coming in and out of that way, and that roadway will be maintained the way it is.
Right. Well, every time I hear about, potential for economic vitality in jobs, that would mean people are traveling to get there, and I don't know what you do with 3A anyways. I don't think there's really much that can be done with it, but yeah, it's bad enough now. I'm just, because it's in that section, obviously, as usual, I throw something negative up. But it seems like commuting's always, it's great to have something, but if it takes people forever to get there, And then with residential neighborhoods and backing up traffic, you know what I'm getting at.
Yep.
I mean, anyways, enough said, you know. I didn't see anything on that, just like you mentioned, in the Maple Street area. I think it was called, I wrote it down somewhere. You called it existing conditions slide. You talked about the red area.
Yep.
Oh, whereabouts was that again?
So this is the largest slice of vacant land, which is back here, which is behind Scannell Boiler Works, next to the railroad track, around Silresum, and then behind Lowell Scrap over here.
Okay, so that's the section you referred. I thought you said something about Maple Street.
Oh, no, yeah, again,
Okay.
I have a tendency to speak quite quickly
So I
sometimes.
was thinking of Maple Street, you know, it's pretty much the Chelmsford border and 495 and.
Yeah, those areas we have, as you can see, the access roads coming in off of Tanner Street there to direct traffic in to and from Tanner to then get to and from the connector from our realigned Tanner Street.
Okay, well, thank you very,
I just thought of one thing, is there any,
I'm sorry, your time is up.
I actually do have a plan that's not officially part of the plan, but yes, there's some very creative ideas and reuse scenarios, and they typically involve the rear portion of Silresum, because we see in this district 2 opportunities for really catalytic developments, things that around which we can sell the idea to a lot of the partners at the state and federal level to help initiate the project that will be of benefit to others. So a principal one here is the Tanner Street realignment, which is the focus of our very near-term efforts. The second is the redevelopment of the Silresum site, because that involves creating a lot of the infrastructure and access that opens up a lot of the rest of that vacant land, such as what I said about being ready when a developer comes to us, or any business owner or someone with an idea to develop that site. We say, well, we have the infrastructure and roadway here, we can extend it in this way or that way, and we're willing to work with you and do that in whatever way you need. There are a lot of opportunities out there, and a lot of interest in renewables, and some more creative uses, including bioremediation, things like PVs, but where you have algal. I won't even try and explain it. That's not in my field, but it involves some very creative remediation ideas that are targeted in and around that site. And I think that we have a fairly flexible list of tools that we can go after because of the nature of that site, how it was addressed before, and that has a very thick cap as opposed to other areas. So we have a base that we can work with, as well as some of the other details. So that is in the near-term planning for that. Thank you.
It's like you're really building on the Hamilton Canal District and doing something even better for an industrial setting.
I would say different. I appreciate that. Just that we I hope have learned a lot of lessons, and we continue to build on the successes that we've seen and experienced in other areas in the city, and reapply those in new and creative ways.
Okay, thank you again.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Okay, next order of business is the minutes for approval. These are the minutes from May 12th and May 29th of 2014. Any comments, questions, changes, additions? Hearing none, could I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 12, 2014 and the May 29, 2014 meetings.
Have a second?
Second motion.
Could I have a roll call?
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Palia?
Approved?
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve.
Mr. Peck?
Approve.
Mr. Perrin?
Approve.
Okay, so our next scheduled meeting is the 23rd of June. And anything else from any other board members? Hearing none, we have a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
So moved.